Have you ever asked yourself the question, will prayer make a difference? Constantly throughout the scriptures, we're exhorted to spend time in prayer. Prayer for ourselves and prayer for others. In Ephesians 6:18, Paul exhorted the brethren there in Ephesus, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. Will prayer make a difference? Will spending more time in prayer this year make a difference in your life? Great Controversy, page 525, tells us it is part of God's plan to grant us, in answer to the prayer of faith, that which He would not bestow, did we not thus ask. So there are things in your experience, there are things that God will not give you unless you ask for it. Sometimes we think, well, God already knows all what I need, so why do I got to pray about it? Why do I have to tell Him? There are things that God will not give you and grant you unless you asked for it. And when we fail to pray, especially for others, when we fail to pray for others, we deprive others of a blessing from heaven. Ellen White tells us this in Medical Ministry, page 195. When you neglect to offer prayer for the sick, you deprive them of great blessings. For angels of God are waiting to minister to these souls in response to your petitions. Brothers and sisters, pray. And when you find someone who's in need, take that time to pray for them. Take them aside and offer up a prayer in faith to God, because by not doing it, we deprive them of great blessing. We need to take time to pray for others. We need to take time to pray for ourselves. Messages to Young People, page 90. If you feel no danger, and if you offer no prayer for help and strength to resist temptation, you will be sure to go astray. Brothers and sisters, prayer, communion with God, it is so vital for our experience. And I know we know this, but from my own experience, even though we know this many times because of the busyness of life, we neglect to pray. We neglect communion with God. We neglect time to study the Scriptures. And again, we're depriving ourselves from spiritual strength. And again, what's the most common excuse for skipping out in devotion? I'm too busy, right? You have this long to-do list. And I want to share with you something about Martin Luther that we read about his life. For Martin Luther, an extra load on his to-do list, on his duties, was reason enough to actually pray more, not less. He says, and this is quoting from him, work from early till late. In fact, I have so much to do that I shall spend the first 3 hours in prayer. And again, it seems counterintuitive, right? I have more to do, therefore I should pray less. But guess what? The things that you do during your day with prayer, God will bless that time of communion, and it will go farther. You will be more efficient. You will be more effective in your day than if you had not spent that time in prayer. I'll read to you one quote that goes along these lines, Counsels to Health, page 424. If the rush of work is allowed to drive us from our purpose of seeking the Lord daily, we shall make the greatest mistakes. We shall incur losses, for the Lord is not with us. We have closed the doors so that He cannot find access to our souls. The grace of Christ can accomplish for us that which all our efforts will fail to do. Brothers and sisters, we need to learn from Jesus. In Jesus' experience, he often withdrew himself to a quiet place to spend time in communion with Jesus. We see this in the Gospel of Luke. In the Gospel of Luke chapter 5. Luke chapter 5, verse 16. It tells us, and he withdrew himself into the wilderness and prayed. And again, you might think, if there was any person, any human being on this earth who was busy, it was Jesus. Jesus was always busy. There was always people looking for him. And even in this chapter, what do we see happening before verse 16? Verse 16 tells us, but so much the more went there a fame abroad of him, and great multitudes came together to hear and to be healed by Jesus of their infirmities. And it's in the context of his busy schedule. People were flocking to hear his preaching, to be healed by him. That's the context. And then verse 16 says, and he withdrew himself into the wilderness and prayed. May the Lord help us that in the busyness of life, in our days, that it would not lead us to less communion with God, but to a deeper and a closer walk with him. Because our work, our life will be blessed when we give God our time. He will bless it. He will bless our efforts. May the Lord help us to be faithful in our communion with him.